Hey, Canvas Connect, it is so good to be able to join you for part 2 in our deep dive into the 7 churches, the 7 messages given to the Apostle John while he was on the island called Patmos in exile, in prison for his faith. And he had a vision of Jesus as he mapped out this book that we call the Book of Revelation, the book of the unveiling work of Jesus ascended in glory and his heart for us as his people to be overcomers. We've already unpacked the first church, which is found in the church at Ephesus. This second one, the church at Smyrna, if you were to see a map, you'd see in modern-day Turkey, which is where these churches are now, or these cities were based, you can see a sort of map starting to build where it's almost like Jesus is sending these messages to John as if he was doing a travel course from Ephesus and around. And the next church on the map is Smyrna. Smyrna was a significant city during the time of the Apostle John. They were a centre of education and culture and resource. They were influential. It was a significant place to be. And the reality is we don't quite know how the church in Smyrna started. My expectation would be that the church in Ephesus grew so influential that it sent out church planters into the regions around it. And I believe the church in Smyrna was started. But the church in Smyrna was one that came under immense local persecution. For us living here in Australia, where we're free to meet publicly, where our ability to buy and sell isn't affected because of our faith, we sometimes read over portions of Scripture where followers of Jesus suffered immense persecution, and I don't know if we fully get the pressure that they were under. In fact, I would say to you, the church in Smyrna is a church that was under pressure. And their keys to victory show us how we can live it as people that do come under pressure from time to time, go through hard times, or even as we move into the future, if widespread persecution were to break out in our nation, what would it look like for us to be a church that perseveres through it? The word Smyrna, the name of the city, literally means crushed. What an encouraging name for a city. It means crushed, and it comes from a substance that they would use, a substance called myrrh that they would use when people had passed away. They would crush this substance to release an aroma and an oil that would be used as part of the funeral process. And it seems significant to me that the church at Smyrna, the city that means to be crushed, would be the church that came under the most pressure of these 7 churches. And so Jesus dictates this message to John. Now, I just want to unpack it with us before we go into our discussion. It comes out of Revelation chapter 2, verse 8. First off, Jesus starts all of these messages by saying to John, write to the angel. Now, that's an interesting point there. What does that mean? Does each church have a guardian angel that is stationed there to represent the heart of God there in that place? Or what I think it means, and I've got to say a lot of the book of Revelation, you do have to take a bit as theory, is that word angel literally means messenger. And when you see it interpreted as angel in our English Bibles, it's because the interpreters of the Bible have taken the context of the scripture and applied to it either a human messenger or a divine being. I would submit to you, I wonder if the angel's been referred to here as simply the messenger of the church, potentially the lead pastor, potentially the head overseer, potentially the one who is now tasked with the opportunity to unpack into that local church what Jesus wants to say to them. So he says, write to the angel of the church in Smyrna. Thus says the first and the last, the one who was dead and came to life. This is significant that Jesus said this to the church in Smyrna because the people of Smyrna throughout history had been conquered by opposing forces, but yet had chosen to rebuild. They were a tough people. They were a people that didn't look for the outside to fix their problems. They were people that were willing to face hard times and go through the hard times and then rebuild from that. They were a stubborn people. They were strong. They were unwilling to give up. And the one who has faced death itself and overcome death, the ultimate one who faced hard times and overcame, is sending them this message. Goes on in verse 9. I know your affliction and the poverty that you're facing, but you are rich. I know the slander of those who say they are Jews and are not, but are of the synagogue of Satan. So what had happened is at that time when local persecution broke out, your ability as a Christian to just buy and sell in the marketplace was hindered. You were ostracized from main community because it was actually offensive to the community that you were a Christian. And for us, we maybe don't quite get that in the nation that we're in and the culture that we're in. But at that point in history, if you were in a city that was led by Rome, every year you were expected to worship the Roman emperor. There would be a temple built in honor of the Roman emperor. And once a year, you were meant to line up with others and grab a piece of incense, a pinch of incense, and go up to the altar that was burning a flame and throw the incense in and recite a sense of pledge that you would worship the Roman emperor as God, as well as all your other gods. But the original Christians, by Roman standards, were called atheists because the Romans could not get their head around the fact that you were free to worship whatever you wanted to worship. You could worship a twig, a stone. You could worship a front door. It doesn't matter, just as long as you worship the Roman emperor. But Christians, in following Jesus, knew that there was no other Lord above Jesus, no other king above Jesus. And you could not mix the worship of anything else with the worship of Jesus. God is the one and only worthy of worship. And so they made the radical choice. We won't worship the stones or the twigs or the front door or whatever. We won't even worship the emperor. They'll honour the emperor. They'll honour the laws and the customs. They'll follow things and be good citizens, but they will not worship him. And because of that, they were persecuted. It says there that there were Jews in that city that stirred up the persecution. It seems to me that the greatest source of persecution came from those that Jesus had come out of originally, who were attempting to stop what God was doing at that time. And it shows us as a church that when we face hard times, pressure, persecution, whether from work colleagues or family or friends, stand. Don't retaliate. Don't fight back with fists or words. Just stand and allow God to work through us even there. Jesus says in verse 10, don't be afraid of what you're about to suffer. Goes on to say that some were about to be thrown in jail for 10 days, that Satan was setting up a trap. And it's significant to me that the church in Smyrna, Jesus has no word of correction for them. The church in Ephesus had forgotten its first love. The church in Smyrna was standing up under pressure. Jesus had no challenge for them, but he did have a warning. Don't allow fear to rob you of the faith that you're standing in. And here's what the church under pressure says to me today, that everything can be going well even while everything is not going well. Even while we are facing hard times, we can be going well in ourselves because our source of life is not life itself. It's the giver of life. But the thing that will rob us of that source is moving from faith to fear. In the book of 2 Timothy, chapter 1, Paul writes to a young leader and says, you've not received a spirit of fear, but a power, love, and a sound mind. I believe personally that it's not unbelief that's the opposite of faith, it's fear. And what does fear do? It robs us of stepping into all that God has for us. As Joshua was sent out with Caleb as one of the 12 spies into the promised land under Moses, 10 of the 12 came back with a report of fear. There's giants in the land. There's battles ahead. We can't surely do this, which is ridiculous. These are the people that had the Red Sea parted for them, that had seen God do miracle after miracle after miracle on their behalf. But when faced with opposition head on, 10 of the 12 spies came back and said, we can't do it because they allowed fear to overrule their faith. 2 came back, Joshua and Caleb, said, yeah, there's giants. Yeah, there's battles. But if God said it, we'll take it. And see, by entering into faith, they were able to lead the next generation to inherit the promises of God. For us, if we're under pressure, can I call us to be a people that do not surrender our faith by embracing fear and live out the reality of our relationship with Jesus, even when times get tough. Can I encourage you as you delve into your discussion, why not audit? What does it look like for you when you come under pressure? How do you respond? Do you respond out of fear? Or what does it actually look like to respond in faith? I'm not talking about faking it. I'm not talking about ignoring problems. I'm not talking about pretending things aren't happening. Jesus sees. He saw the church in Smyrna under tough times, but yet he gave them a warning. Don't let fear in. If you're finding this message online and you're not currently connected with us here at Canvas Church and you're in the region of Rockingham, why not drop us a line at hello@canvaschurch.com.au and allow us the opportunity to connect you up with like-minded people that are doing the journey and living out their faith in the day-to-day. And can encourage us in our Connect groups. Why not take the time to unpack what it looks like to live for Jesus even while under pressure? God bless you. Have fun. Live it out. It's okay if we feel like we're making it up as we go, because God's grace is there every step of the way. Bless you.